You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Wednesday. I am Brandon Olsen. You can find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. You can also find all of my written work with Whole Nine Sports. That's WHOLENINE Sports. Today, we'll talk about Florida Gators and how they can improve their pass rush from last season. We'll see where the Gators wound up in the top 100 ESPN college football players list. That was a mouthful. And we'll wrap up by talking about BetOnline.ag win totals for the Gators. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to follow Locked On Gators wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And be sure to subscribe to Locked On Gators on YouTube, which, by the way, again, for now, less ads than podcast version. So I'm just saying, the NFL season's about to begin and nobody covers it like the Locked On Podcast Network. August 30th through September 8th, the Locked On NFL podcast is previewing every team and every division with the help of the Odyssey NFL experts. Follow the Ultimate Season Preview 2021 feed on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast to tune in beginning August 30th. Like I said, we're starting off talking about this pass rush and how we can improve it. Here's where we're at. We've got a pretty solid, strong four down lineman base front here. We've got Antonio Shelton and Daquan Newkirk at nose or D tackle. Zachary Carter could work D tackle or D end. We've got Brenton Cox, Jeremiah Moon, and Chris Bogle really as the other pass rushing ends we have there. We can see things happen like Antonio Shelton at the nose, Zachary Carter at the Antonio Shelton or Daquan Newkirk at the nose, Zachary Carter at 3 technique, which if you don't know 3 technique, that's lining up on the outside shoulder of the guard. So kind of between the guard and tackle, but closer to the guard than just in the middle, if you didn't know. And then the other rush end would be Brenton Cox Jr., Jeremiah Moon, or Chris Bogle. Like that's what we're working with in pretty much our base fronts. That's where we're at with it. And it's a solid starting point. I'm not gonna lie. It's a pretty solid starting point to have, at least when you're just broad strokes purposes looking at what we've got. I think it's pretty solid in general defensively, not just from a pass rush situation, but just looking at our defensive line in general. I think it's stronger than most people are giving it credit for, just given that there's been a decent bit of turnover, specifically defensive tackle. You know, we lost quite a bit of production there. But I wanted to talk about a kind of different way that the Gators can improve it, because, sorry, I misspoke with the Giants there because I'm about to bring up the Giants. The Giants were kind of the originators of something as the NASCAR package, which, if you don't know, the NASCAR package is, Justin Tuck, O.C. Manoro, Matthias Kiwanuka, and Jason Pierre-Paul, putting them all on the field at once, because the purpose of it is to get your 4 best pass rushers on your defensive line at one time. That was what the Giants did. Teams have done it since then, but they were kind of the ones that introduced it, really. The Gators can kind of steal that a little bit, because, again, we can wreak havoc by just putting out guys like, here's how I'm thinking of it. Zachary Carter, Brenton Cox, defensive tackles. I'll put that one in air quotes, defensive tackles there. Because, of course, Zachary Carter could play DT, but at this point he'd probably be lined up as a 2 tech, so head up with the guard, as would Brenton Cox Jr., and they'd be slightly undersized at that point, which is why you would be strictly passing downs. But they'd probably be our defensive tackles, and then we'd have Chris Bogle, Jeremiah Moon, or Princely would be our ends. Probably be Chris Bogle on one side, and either Jeremiah Moon or Princely on the end there. I would assume it would be Moon, mainly because he offers a little bit more versatility as someone who can drop back in coverage. And if we want to just rush 3, we can do that, although that's not the purpose of the NASCAR package, obviously. but it would give us a little bit of a disguising that we can do there, having 3 rush in, Jeremiah Moon drop back. He'd probably, I know I said like defensive line, but it's edge rushers. Like whether or not you're a 3-4 outside linebacker, 4-3 D line, like you're an edge rusher, you're practically D line, you're on the ball. So that's defensive end, defensive tackles. We're just putting a whole bunch of air quotes around our defensive line right now. One thing also is that in 2018 and 2019, we had inside backers be a bit more productive as pass rushers, where we had Voshawn Joseph, Ventrell Miller in 2019. They were more involved as pass rushers than we saw last year, more effective as pass rushers than we saw last year. But this year, I'd like to see us get back to that a little bit. And I mean, even if you put them in the NASCAR package, like we could put them in the NASCAR package, and we can have the D line from, I mean, I'm not going to say from left to right because I don't care what side they're lined up on, but our 4 D linemen on the outside, inside will have Zachary Carter, Brenton Cox, Chris Bogle, and Princely. And then you could put Jeremiah Moon as one of the off-ball linebackers, and you can send him through the A gap. You can send him through the B gap. You can make him the interior blitzer there. That's one possibility. We can see guys like DeJuan Black line up at the Mike linebacker spot and have him rush in, or Will and have him rush in. And then kind of just the point is to create a little bit of havoc. And that's something that the Gators didn't do enough of last year. I want the pass rush to step up. That's how they can do it. Get your best pass rushers on the field and just let them pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. Like that's what we're looking at here. Ventrell Miller, as much as I love him, I don't want to see him blitzing a ton just because, I mean, I don't think he should be. I think we have better players that can do, or not better players, but players that are better suited to fill that role. And I'm mainly looking at literally just like your first step acceleration. That's what's really getting me there. First step acceleration and speed, because the point is you're not necessarily hoping to shed the blocking at the pass rush line. You're hoping to blitz the A gap or the B gap and pretty much just get in the backfield, hopefully with a free runner. And that's why I want to put faster players out there like Jeremiah Moon and DeJuan Black. I want to let our D-line eat them up and come in. And I know I was talking about the NASCAR package, that even if we're not going with the NASCAR package, we could do that specifically with Jeremiah Moon, because it's still putting Zachary Carter, Brenton Cox Jr. on the DN spots with Antonio Shelton, Daquan Newkirk at D tackle. So you still have probably your 4 best defensive linemen on the field at all times, or not at all times, but at that time. And then Jeremiah Moon off ball could then come in, and it could pretty much just look like our base defense at that point. And just, it would help create confusion, create mayhem, disrupt offenses. And that's what we need to do this year, because this secondary is good. I'm not gonna lie, but we have a pretty big question mark at the corner 2 spot right now. And if we want to address that, improving your pass rush is probably the best way to do that without straight up just improving who's your corner 2, which at this point, we don't really have that liberty of doing so. So that's a huge thing that I'm looking at least when we're talking about this pass rush, how to improve them, how to get our sack total up, because face it, last year we just were not productive enough as pass rushers, and that's really got to step up. And hopefully it will, also because we'll have our offense on the field more, defense more rested, and they'll be ready to go full throttle more often. Think the Gators have a shot at the Natty this year? If you're confident, BetOnline currently has plus 2,800 odds, and I'm just saying, I'm going to take them. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. BetOnline even covers award shows, TV shows, and reality TV with real-time updated odds and props on almost anything you can imagine. It is the best way to place your bets, and it's 100% free to sign up. Head to the website or use your mobile device today, which is how I do it, to sign up and get a 100% welcome bonus. That's 100% welcome bonus. That's double what you put in, by the way. If you're not good at math, now you know. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Make sure to use promo code LOCKEDON. That is LOCKED, no space, ON. Looking at the ESPN top 100 list, the Gators had 2 Gators make the list, and I got a couple opinions about it. Yeah, just a couple opinions here. First off, we have Kaiir Elam made the list, which is duh. Like we know he was gonna be there. He made the list at number 40 though, and that's kind of what threw me off because we're looking at a guy that's probably a top 10 to 15 player in college football, if you're asking me. Like that's how I'm thinking about it, because I mean he'll probably be a top 10 pick in the draft next year. Again, if you're asking me, he'll probably be a top 10 pick in the draft next year, which is like, I get it. Not that I understand that just because you're going to be that high in the draft doesn't mean that you're best college player or whatever it is. But I mean, if you're going to be listed that high, odds are you're probably somewhere in that conversation for being a top college football player. And especially if you're playing a position like corner, where I feel like the hit rate, or I feel like the bust rate is lower, I want to say. So I feel like it's weird, but at least looking at the elite college corner to the acceptable NFL player, I feel like it's, I feel like that bust rate's lower. And I mean, yeah, it's just like not like, let alone not being top 10 to 15. Being number 40 out of 100 is, it makes no sense to me. And like, again, this could just be my DB bias, my Gator bias, whatever you want to call it. But 40 is offensively low if we're talking about Kaiir Elam. Next up, we have Brenton Cox Jr. at number 59. And I was a little surprised about this one, I'll say. Not that I don't think he should be on the list, but I mean, talent-wise, sure, he's that dude. But at the same time, I've been talking about it, he's so wildly inconsistent, and like I've been saying, like he's toolsy. He's a toolsy player, but he's never put it together to really show that he should be a top 100 player, let alone top 60. And that's what's confusing to me, because I just spoke about Kaiir Elam, where it's like he's got the tools to be a top pick in the draft. So does Brenton Cox Jr. But like, if you're rating them on how good they are now as football players, I don't get how Kaiir Elam and Brenton Cox Jr. can be so close, because Kaiir Elam, to me, is far and away better than anybody that we've got really in this defense. And them being 19 spots away, just that doesn't make a ton of sense. That's like, you think they're pretty close talent-wise. And like, Brenton Cox Jr. has never shown that he can put it together. As much as I love him, he has not put it together even at all. So Kaiir Elam should be significantly higher than Brenton Cox. And the thing that's most surprising to me is that Zachary Carter didn't make the list, because if I'm putting together this list, I'm not saying that he like belongs to be high on the list or anything like that. I think he would be on the list. I think he'd be a bit lower, but the fact that he didn't make the list at all and Brenton Cox made it in the 50s is also confusing, because Zachary Carter's been more productive. Like, let's just look at production-wise. Zachary Carter's been more productive. Zachary Carter's more versatile with being an inside-out pass rusher, and he's just a better overall defender versus the run and the pass. So that's what really throws me off there. Like, I'm not even going to complain about anybody else not making the list. It's understandable for pretty much everybody else. Like, I get why Ventrell Miller didn't make the list. I get all that. But Kaiir Elam, way too low. Brenton Cox Jr., I don't think really should have been on the list. As much as I love him, I don't know if he should have been on the list at all, but if he was, he shouldn't be number 59, and he shouldn't be above Zachary Carter. Like, Zachary Carter not making the list is, to me, the biggest snub that I've seen on any of these lists in a very long time, because like, he is that dude. He is the alpha of this defensive line. Like, he is the better or more consistent pass rusher. Sure, he doesn't have as high a ceiling as Brenton Cox, but I don't think this is a list of ESPN's top 100 college ceilings. Like, that's simply put not it. So that's very confusing to me that Brenton Cox is 59, Zachary Carter is not on the list at all. Like, I don't know what they were thinking when they put together this list, but that's pretty bad. I feel like I know I'm harping on this, but like, I don't get how, again, like I mentioned, Brenton Cox Jr., same thing with Jeremiah Moon, very toolsy players, but they have never consistently put it together. And that's my biggest issue with I mean, they're not finishers of sacks. Like they get a few hurries, few pressures, sure, whatever. But they're not finishers, and they're not disruptive enough to justify not hitting home with any of these sacks. And Zachary Carter has proven he could do that from the interior and exterior. And I think that's such an underrated trait of his, to be one of those guys that's a very versatile defensive lineman, because that's not something we see as often as we would hope to see. And that's why it's like it's very confusing to me, at least. As we build the anticipation for the football season, let's start building our bodies too. Built Bar is the best protein bar on the market. And yeah, I know a lot of people are all about coconut brownie chunk of this, coconut brownie chunk of that, chocolate grasshopper this, which I'll never in my life try. Sorry, Built Bar, love you, but I'm out on that one. I'm more of a salted caramel guy, peanut butter brownie kind of guy, stuff like that, because then they slap. It's as simple as that. But like, chocolate grasshopper to me, sorry, it's just, it ain't my vibe. If you're trying to eat clean, but you've got a sweet tooth like me, that's no longer a problem. Built Bar is your low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and high fiber delicious solution. You can even enjoy it if you're keto. Remember that one. Remember to use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your next order. That is locked, LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your next order at BuiltBar.com. Looking at BetOnline win totals for the Florida Gators. Florida Gators are currently set at 9 wins, which I'm taking the over on that. I don't know about you, but like I'm taking the over on that, because to me, I'm knocking on wood because I hate to do this, or actually I'm knocking on wood you can see because I hate to do this, but 9-3 to me is a failure of a year. Like, I know I was talking in the YouTube comments the other day about this. Like, it's a failure to be 9-3, at least from my perspective. I'm looking at our schedule, of course, 12 games. So yeah, they think we're going to go 9-3. I'm looking at our schedule, and I see Florida Atlantic, South Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, LSU, South Carolina, Samford, Missouri, and Florida State. 10 wins. That's what I see. 10, or not even 10 wins. 10 wins that I think are pretty, like, I'm pretty confident in those wins. 10. 2 games I didn't list on there: Alabama, Georgia. Those are the 2 that I'm like, okay, I think we've got a decent risk to lose. And I know that we've been talking about the Alabama game a lot. Believe me, week 3, we're going to be talking about it a lot. Like, you're going to get annoyed by it. And yes, I don't feel bad. I don't. I'm sorry, but I'm not actually sorry. But I mean, when I'm looking at that schedule, yeah, like Florida State, Florida Atlantic, South Florida, Florida State too, if we're being honest. Samford are 4 games that we should be just so far ahead in. Tennessee, and those were out of conference games. Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Missouri, conference games that we should be so ahead in. One game that I mentioned as a win that I didn't get to there yet is LSU. I'll get to it. But right now we've got Alabama week 3 is, yeah, that's going to be a toughie. Like, again, I am pretty not confident that we'll win, but I'm like, if we were to win, I'd be ecstatic and happy, but it wouldn't shock me at all. Like, this is a very good Gators team. This is sure a very good Alabama team, but I don't care if you're very good. I know we're very good, and that's what's more important to me, at least. So yeah, Alabama could be a loss. Like, that's a game where it's like, yeah, if we lose, like, I'm not going to be upset. If we win, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm going to be very happy. I'm not going to be shocked. Georgia, I know that I'm constantly dunking on Georgia for being a team that is not well coached, that they're well recruited, and that they play scared. Unfortunately, playing scared can win you games. Playing scared will not win you a championship, but playing scared will win you games. And that's what Georgia does. They play very simple offense. They play very good defense, and they protect the football in the most boring way possible. Hate it, kind of, not going to lie. But they play scared, and that can win you games, especially games against a team like Florida, where our run defense last year specifically was pretty bad. So if our run defense doesn't pick up and their run offense continues to be Georgia's run offense, yeah, we're gonna be going through it. But again, it's still a game that I'm more confident in the Georgia game than the Bama game. Obviously, that's how I feel. And when we see Georgia and Clemson play early on, we'll really get a feel for if Georgia's real or not. Like that's an important thing also. Like Georgia and Alabama has Miami, and Miami's not awful, but they're a pretty decent team. So we'll get a feel for how Alabama's going to look this year. Luckily for us, when we roll into that Alabama game, we've got Florida Atlantic and South Florida. So if we play it smart, we can look like a pretty basic offense and kind of lull everybody, and then come out swinging against Alabama. Looking at the LSU game that I know is on the list, but I didn't say it should be like a big game or anything, or like a big blowout or anything. LSU's like a trap game, I guess. Not really, though, because like they're 16th ranked, but they are pretenders. Like that game is something that I think we should win pretty easily. Last year, I thought that too, though, and that didn't happen at all. Then I don't want to go further into it. But this year, like, we're gonna learn LSU's not about it. Like that's what we're gonna see. LSU's not about it. They have defense is all right. Like their D line's pretty good. They've got a couple good players in the secondary, like they always do. But their offense, it's looking like pre-Joe Burrow offense. Like they've lost their best playmakers on there, and yes. So I'm looking at 10-2. I'm taking the 9 wins. I'm going over that. That's to me a very easy cut and dry decision. But that about does it for today's episode of Locked On Gators. Join me tomorrow as we'll maybe look into what a 2 quarterback system could look like for the Gators. And I say maybe because I'm gonna need visuals for it, and I want to make sure I can get it to work right and make it look pretty clean. So might need an extra day or so with it, but just know that's coming up. We're going to look at a 2 QB system. Once again, my name is Brandon Olsen. You can find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. You can find all of my written work with Whole 9 Sports. That's WHOLENINE Sports. Don't forget to follow Locked On Gators wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enjoy the lesser ads while you can. Be sure to check out Locked On Fantasy Football, hosted by Vinny Iyer, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I know I spoke about this yesterday, but I'm going to do it again today, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday, who knows. But I've got fantasy drafts coming up. So I am listening to Locked On Fantasy Football to get my team straight, get my team right, so I can get some money. Betting on the Gators doesn't have to be a guessing game if you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day. Follow the Locked On Bets podcast brought to you by BetOnline.ag wherever you get your podcasts.